Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode, and this is all about artificial intelligence and robotics. We have our expert, Mr. Don. Hopefully, he can come up with a very detail about the AI. He has very good experience on AI and healthcare system. We have our policy analyst, Dr. William. We have Professor Donald. He's also expert in AI, and we have our Alex, very energetic friends. So I want to start with Mr. Dan. So how are you today? Happy New Year's. And what do you want to share about artificial intelligence with our audience?
Hi. I'm doing well, thanks. I didn't come with anything particular to share, but I'd like to get into what I work on, which is applying AI to medical imaging, because I believe that will be of enormous benefit to developing nations, and what we find in developed countries as well, because what we find is with imaging technology in hospitals improving, more and more imaging being done, the workloads for radiologists are increasing, and they have very little time to analyze these huge volume of medical images. So that's where AI can come in and do automated analysis. And instead of, where you might have a human that would be looking for one specific disease, that is indicated, an AI system can simultaneously look for thousands of diseases and abnormalities. So the benefits in AI, I think that medical imaging is an area where the benefits of AI are extremely clear and will be apparent very soon. So I'm mainly here to answer questions about that. And also another area that is of interest to me is AI safety. So I'm happy to talk about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. William, Happy New Year. How are you today? And what do you want to share about this AI and robotics engineering? And now it's very popular. And many corporations and everyone joining in robotics and AI related things. Even many startup I know, they are trying to developing robotics engineering related projects as well as AI and many things. So what do you want to share? What should be the better policy for this AI and robotics engineering?
Okay, well, boy, that's complex, but I appreciate it because you know what? I'm just so happy that we're in 2021 because I know that we are going to do better. And let me just say this: we made it. Happy New Year, to everyone! And I'm glad to be back here talking to all of our audiences members. First, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give us just kind of the context in which we're talking, and that is that we're talking about artificial intelligence and robotics, but essentially they're two separate areas. Artificial intelligence is an entire section all on its own. Robotics it sounds new and sexy, but essentially it isn't. It's something that we've known for quite some time. You could essentially, when they changed from horses to cars back in the early 1900s, late 1890s and early 1910s or whatever, they could have. That's what they called, industrial revolution, the beginning, the mechanization and such. And robotics is just simply the next step. So that's more of an evolution in terms of what we've done, and that's really not so shocking. I know that there are a number of scary films out there, and there is this kind of thematic discussion that robots are going to take our jobs. They're going to do this. Essentially, robotics is just going to make things more efficient where they can, thus freeing up human capital to go into those areas that we've not yet explored. Now, on the other hand, you have artificial intelligence, which is really the gold mine because it leads to all kinds of other areas. Just as was previously mentioned, it can be applied in the medical field. It can be applied all other things. But what I'd like us to do now is just to kind of get an assessment of where we're at, and then where at least the United States is looking to go currently. And what we should know is that from approximately 1960 to 1980, the United States spent about 1.25% of its gross domestic product on investments in AI technologies. So that was up to 1980. And so that was the before. Moderate investment over a long period of time. What we've seen, though, since 1980, so essentially for the last 40 years, the United States has investment as a percentage of the gross domestic product has dropped down to 0.7%. And so that is important because our gross domestic product, the pie that we are measuring by, has grown significantly. And yet our investment as part of that pie has decreased, so that we've been woefully behind in terms of the research and advances and moving forward. That's why it boils down today in conversations that you might hear when people talk about 5G technology and why China is advanced in the implementation or distribution of 5G and the United States is behind. It's essentially a technology gap, and that's kind of what we're facing because of underinvestment. That having been said, the good news is that at least the projections are for the new administration, they're looking to invest over the next 4 years over $300 billion over the next 4 years into areas of research and development, including these areas, because this is a really big area. In quantum information sciences, quantum-based cryptography, quantum-based communication, and quantum-based computing. Now, that is important because $400 billion represents a significant increase. And by contrast, the Trump administration, over the past 2 years, had only been allocated as part of their budget $1 billion a year. So you take $300 billion over 4 years rather than just a total sum of $3 billion. So that represents a significant investment in where we need to go to try to make up that technology gap. Now, that's going to be in addition to the existing research and development programs that the federal government has already run. We're going to see these in these areas: AI, quantum capability, clean energy, and 5G rollout. Now, just one final thing that I want to just highlight for this discussion, and that is simply this: that when it comes to dealing with AI and the building of the systems that are going to analyze, whether it's in the medical field or the financial fields, or particularly something that we can all relate to, which is facial recognition, there is a very, very real danger of structural discrimination. Most recently, we've seen reports with regard to the inefficiencies of facial recognition because they can't distinguish Black people. Imagine that, see one, see them all. They all look alike kind of stuff. And that's because of the programming and the systems that have already been built. And that we've run into that problem already, at least in the United States, where we've had a misidentification of people of color in various instances when police forces have been using facial recognition or AI technology to try to solve crimes, find perpetrators. Incidentally, significantly over this past summer during the Black Lives Matter here in the United States, the various policing agencies were criticized because they were attempting to use facial recognition technology to identify protesters who participated in the Black Lives Matter. Now, that's something that's important for the United States. Now, in other countries such as China, they freely employ facial recognition technology. Nevertheless, for our purposes in this discussion, AI is going to cascade and impact all of those things. However, there is a real danger of structural or systematic discrepancies, discrimination, racism, depending on who is building the platform, which calls for the need of diversity in these fields as people are moving through and building the very technologies. But investments in AI, we've talked on previous programs about human capital in those nations, developing nations that have an overabundance of human capital. That is, people just need to be connected to the internet and then, engage with the world. This is one of those areas that makes it possible, and it becomes a growth area for developing nations. Sharif. I can't hear you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your very good analysis, specifically based on the policy and other things. We have Professor Donald. Professor Donald, you have a lot of experience on innovation and innovation-related things. And as you have to run different kind of innovation lab, so how do you want to analyze different kind of startup, like they can develop their projects on AI and robotics, and what's the benefit? And how you want to advise different kind of developing nations that how they can invest on AI and what will be the strategic benefit in the future?
It's kind of hard to talk about it without some idea of what it actually is and what robotics and AI actually are. So what Dan is doing and what Dr. William were talking about are very similar in a sense. So they, the radiology, the pictures of our cells, the insides of our cells, the various things, for instance, our lungs, and the facial recognition are done by a similar the same technology, which is the technology of facial recognition, of deep learning. And the way that in 10,000 foot view of that is that we sort of mimic human neurons. And what we do is we look at, every time it looks at a face, it changes the program a little bit inside. And it keeps, and just like human beings, we see lots and lots and lots and lots of faces, and we make a generalization that this is a face. We make better generalizations about faces we've seen more often. So there's a kind of a thing that people say that all Asians look alike. Some people say that, and it's because at one time people would not see a lot of Asians, so they didn't really get to know people well enough to notice all the, that they're just as different as everybody. Everybody's totally different than each other. I have my acupuncturist is from China, and she said, I have a problem. All Caucasians look alike to me, and I can't tell people apart. So I was working on a natural language parser using the internet, the precursor to the internet in late 70s and early 80s. And the problem that I ran into was that I couldn't get enough speech, transcribed speech, to be able to really test what I was doing, because it just wasn't available at the time. Now, because of Facebook and Google and things like that, we actually have a lot of speech and a lot of faces. So what's happened is that Facebook can look at millions and millions and billions of faces and train this deep learning so that you can recognize faces. And what Dr. William was talking about is a consequence of it not being trained on enough African American or Black faces. And that'll work itself out with time. I mean, it's got to do with the availability of the internet and the percentage of the population and various kinds of things like that. But the key to all of that is the amount of data that we've collected. It's not the artificial intelligence, deep learning that's kind of revolutionized a lot of things, just recognizes stuff. That's all it does. It doesn't know how to do anything with any of that stuff. It's not intelligent really in any way. And it's just very sophisticated recognition systems. So kind of the key to artificial intelligence is right now is big data and the data that we're allowed to collect for things. And I think that's an interesting aspect of it. I don't know. I mean, I can answer. Well, so basically, that's what companies need to do, is they need to get their hands on some sort of big data source. And Twitter has an interface that you can use to examine what they do. You have to, I don't know how Dan is getting the images that they use, but that's what they need, is lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of images to train their software. Computers aren't very intelligent. So even though Alexis and so on seem intelligent, what they're doing is they're just basically taking the speech, transcribing it to text, and then taking that text and looking stuff up in a dictionary called an ontology, which is a dictionary where the inner every node can potentially be connected to another node, or every word can be potentially connected to another word. And by doing that, they have dictionaries where they can take a word and look it up and find all the related words to it and guess what the person means at that time. It has nothing to do with language. It's utterly unrelated. And I mean, there's a vague relationship, but it's not really anything to do with human language. And I've talked to venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, and one of them was telling me, she said, if any company started to work on basically the aspect of language called prosody, which is the tones we make or the sounds we make. So if I said something like, Mary is walking to town. Mary is walking to town. That means that I'm surprised that Mary's actually doing it. Mary is walking to town. That means that I'm surprised that she's walking as opposed to driving. And Mary's walking to town. Mary doesn't like to go to town. And anyway, none of the speech recognition things deal with that at all. And so human language is so incredibly rich, and we're so far from being able to do anything with it at all. I will say one more thing. That's one of the potential applications that I think is going to be huge and continue to grow for years and years and years. I want to say one more thing about it. When every person says a word, like if I say fish, the sounds that I make are a little different than anybody else makes, but we can all recognize the sounds, and that they've gotten better and better. But Alexa and all of those things, they can't recognize foreign accents. They're very terrible at it, and so we have an abstract thing in our brain that allows us to understand what those sounds are. And we've gotten closer to that abstraction by using deep learning, the same techniques that we're using for facial recognition, for recognition of phonemes, the individual sounds within the language. And that is a huge thing that still needs a lot of work. So those are some things that you can work on.
Thank you, Professor. I want to ask questions to Mr. Alex. I know that you are activist and you have a lot of involvement with different kind of sustainable things and many more things. What your observation about AI and robotics, how it works in terms of sustainability and this point?
Sorry, my mic was off. Thank you, Sharif, again for another great show. So as we talk about artificial intelligence, AI, different forms of technology. There's so many, like all the subjects we discuss on this, there's so many main categories, main sectors, and a lot of subcategories. So we're incorporating technology into so many aspects throughout our society. Some of them have a lot of benefits and a lot of positive aspects. Some of them have a lot of detrimental impacts on both our society and the environment. A cell phone, for instance, it's a smartphone. You can use it to get education and do so many things on your cell phone. I mean, the power and the technology in a cell phone is incredible, but we could also dumb ourselves down and waste time and do a lot of bad things on cell phones. So it depends on how we use it, and that depends on how we manage our time and where we set our priorities. One of the things that I love about technology is efficiency. Technology allows us to be very efficient on things that we're trying to accomplish. Unfortunately, some of the big corporations, they use technology to try to be efficient with advertisement, but there's also a lot of ways to be efficient using technology and lowering the overall environmental impact of a specific company's product or some sort of activity through technology. So again, there's just so many sectors. I like how drones are now being, because I personally have a drone, it's my third one. I love how drones are being incorporated in a wide range of different applications that are going to help us be more efficient. So they are incorporating drones in the agriculture industry, and those innovations are helping helping them grow more food or become more efficient. They're using them with search and rescue, disaster response. Of course, they use drones with news and video production. So instead of flying a helicopter that's using and consuming a large volume of fossil fuels, drones are obviously more efficient. And then there's also the aspect of possibly delivering food or goods and stuff in the future. We're not there yet, but that is the direction that we're going. I love how technology also has the ability to educate people more efficiently, like what we're doing here, and has the ability to just educate a lot of people in a shorter amount of time, and with augmented reality, and just a lot of really positive aspects when it comes to education and quality education. So why are we all doing this? I go back to thinking that it's for our quality of life, so we can be healthier, live a better life. We have the access to the medical technologies that helps us live longer and be healthy and survive things, and just be more comfortable. And so there's all those aspects. But then there's the negative consequences of when you incorporate technology. Well, who's creating the technology? Most of the time, it's the people with the high educations. They have their college or university degrees. They had money to begin with. They invested money. They're working for the tech companies. So technology is great in a lot of aspects, but then I think it continues to make a lot of the rich people richer, and it does have the ability to make poor people poorer, because the people that have the technology, that are creating the technology. So I think it may expand the gap in between the rich and the poor and increase the divide, and we could possibly discuss that. I do love how we need to figure out how to deal with all the radiation that we've created with all the nuclear power plants around the world, and how dependent we are on robots to get in to clean up nuclear waste and to deal with nuclear reactor meltdowns and all of that. So recycling is another huge issue that should always be incorporated into talks about technology. How harmful it is for the environment, how countries probably like America is just shipping all of their old cell phones and laptops and all of these electronics to developing countries, Ghana and Nigeria and all this, so they can pick apart them and then take the gold and the finite resources out of those materials. So I do wish that we had regulations and certain oversight similar to OSHA to make sure that the proper protections are in place, that the people working on all these electronics do know the safety protocols to wear safety goggles, gloves, especially the breathing masks, and it's not causing long-term health issues with their lungs or anything like that, because electronics are wonderful, but they have an environmental impact, and they're dangerous when you're breaking them down. Personally, since I'm an environmentalist, before I buy an electronic, I do a lot of research to make sure I'm getting one that I really want, I really like, I'm really going to use it, and it's not just going to end up on the shelf at my house or in a landfill. So before I buy electronics, I really try to vote with my money to do research on the electronic, just to make sure that it's good quality so it lasts longer. As we continue to incorporate technology in our society, like we've talked about in other shows, universal basic income, I think, is going to be important, because it is going to continue to take away jobs. Like, you wouldn't want to be a parking attendant if next you're just going to have the automatic payout, just like the self-checkouts in the grocery stores, just like the new machine that's like literally like flipping hamburger patties. A company would think, oh, if I invest $60,000 or $80,000, whatever it costs for that machine, they never have to pay an employee again, and they just have to pay for the maintenance. So there's that, and then there are a lot of incredible things coming out with technology when it comes to space exploration, aerospace, nanotechnology, the medical industry. Personally, I really like the 3D printed homes and how they're able to build homes more efficiently and certain products with the 3D printing machines. And again, as I mentioned in the last episode, EMPs, electronic magnetic pulses, or coronal mass ejections from the sun always concern me, because if we're so dependent on technology around the world, all it takes is one really bad solar flare or a nuclear device detonated above a specific area, and it would cause devastating impacts regionally, and then there's the risk of hacking. So, and viruses and all that. So those are some of the main topics that wanted to bring into this conversation, and I'll leave it back
Okay.
to the panel.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Dan, I think that you are expert in AI, and specifically right now, every country that is struggling a lot with their healthcare system because of COVID and other things. If you want to share some of your views, even presentations at this point.
Since Dr. Trezevant, I hope I got that right, mentioned bias, I figured I could share a few slides that I presented a couple of years ago at a meetup. So I gave a presentation that was on pitfalls and in machine learning. And one of the things I discussed was bias. So let me see if I can share the presentation. I'm not 100% sure if it's coming, but
yes.
I'm
Yes.
I'm actually using a Linux computer, so hopefully this works. Can you see these slides?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me. I just need to put this in. Can you? All right. Well, let me just. Can you see this slide here?
Yes.
Okay. Let's
Yes.
just go with this. So the point of this this tank story is that the deep learning systems are only as good as the training data that is used to train them. So it's important to emphasize these systems are all narrow systems. They're designed, and trained to do one task, and they require huge amounts of training data. So this story is a bit apocryphal, but it is said that back in the 1960s, the Department of Defense hired some AI researchers to train a system to detect the tanks that were camouflaged. And so to train this system, they used a large number of images and some of them had tanks and some of them did not have tanks. Well, the system did very well on their test images, but when they deployed the system into the field, it broke. It didn't work. So what they found was that the images that had tanks in them were actually all taken in sunny conditions. And so really what the system was doing was it was just learning how to distinguish sunny skies from cloudy skies. And so the data was subtly, biased. So this is just a cautionary tale that you have to be really careful what data you're putting in. There's an expression in computer science, garbage in, garbage out. If you put, these systems are really only as good as the training data. So now I'll just show you a few examples of how the tech companies have really screwed this up. But first, there's a researcher named Kate Crawford, who's one of the leaders in the area of bias in machine learning. And she's distinguished two types of bias that can occur in machine learning systems. The first is what she calls harms of allocation. So this is the more obvious type where the system is actually discriminating against people. One of the most famous cases of this is parole granting algorithms. So there was a parole granting algorithm for prisoners that was determined to have a subtle racial bias in it. But this theoretically could also occur in other critical areas for people's livelihood, like having mortgages approved and the insurance rates. So that's something where regulators are looking at how to regulate the AI and make sure it's not discriminating based on race or gender or things like that. The other type of bias is what she calls harms of representation. This is more subtle, and this is basically where the AI system ends up perpetuating social inequalities and stereotypes that we don't want to be perpetuated. So it's related to what I just said, where the AI systems are really only just as good as the training data. They're basically just going to reproduce whatever they learn from the training data. So if the training data is biased in some way due to say social inequality, or it will pick up that bias. So now just give a few examples. It turns out that tech companies have not really been very good at dealing with these issues. So one example is with job recommendations. So most ads on the internet are distributed or by machine learning algorithms. So like the ads that you see is based on your search history, and it could even be based on your gender or age. And they are machine learning algorithms determine what ads you see and what recommendations you get. So one of the things that was found, this was back in 2015, was women were less likely to be shown ads for high-paying jobs. And it's important to emphasize that this was very likely not intentional. It was more that the system was trained on data where women were mostly working lower-paid jobs. So the machine learning and AI just sort of reproduced what was in the data. But you know, so these kind of issues were not really intentional, but they were. I would say that the companies involved were pretty negligent here. Another example, which some of you may have seen, because was a failure with Google Photos. So this was also back in 2015. Google Photos uses an AI algorithm to automatically label photos. And in this case, it labeled these African-American people as gorillas. So this was a huge public relations fiasco for Google. It was a major failing of Google. And actually, the solution was just to remove the category of gorillas. And so there's an article in Wired magazine where they talk about this, and they say that this problem was actually not easy for them to fix. They had to just remove this category altogether. And again, the reason this happened was that the training data was mostly pictures of white people. It just was biased training data. So the system wasn't good at identifying Black people.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is another example from Google. So I'll go back to the panel now. These are just, yeah. So I think the tech companies really need to step up their game here. I also have some. I also have a book which I got on this subject. I've only read some of it, but it's called Race After Technology. Ruha Benjamin is the author. She's a professor at Princeton. And then I have another book to show people, which is called The Alignment Problem. And I haven't read this one yet either, but it also covers these issues.
There are many questions from the audience, but one question for Mr. Dan I want to take. This is very interesting as per our objective. Tahrina, her question is that in the future, would robot replace teacher in the classroom?
Okay. Theoretically, but I'm not sure why you would need a robot exactly, but I think we're honestly a really long way from that. Because again, these systems are narrow systems. We are. I do not believe we've really made any progress toward the original, or much progress toward the original goal of AI, which was to have a general purpose intelligence that could go out and solve many different problems that were thrown at it, or learn, just kind of learn how all different skills on its own. What all this stuff we've gotten from deep learning is narrow, single-purpose systems. Now, I still think deep learning is going to have a huge economic impact, but it's important to differentiate that from, general purpose human-like AI, which I think we're still really far away from. So I do think AI will take a lot of jobs, like in like the burger flipping robot, and in medical imaging and driverless cars, but I think it's a long way from replacing teachers. You could have like automated learning, but it's a long way, like Coursera, but it's a long way from actually replacing and being functionally equivalent to an actual person.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. William. What do you want to add for this discussion as well as the presentations? Yeah.
Okay, well, I found what Dan went through absolutely illuminating, and it points to one of the challenges and opportunities that we have. That is to say that we're aware of the issue and we know what the cure is, and that's to get more people involved, diversify the workforce, diversify the engineers from all backgrounds, all religions, all creeds, across the globe, because that. I don't know that is the silver bullet, but it certainly gets us a lot farther along. I do want to say this, though, that I think that in our audience, when she asked about robots and teaching, it's interesting because, I'm not sure if she's contemplating like a walking, talking mechanical structure versus some things that we have already employed that that some people may see as robots. So, for example, remote telehealth. You've got this in some hospitals that are first adopting kinds of institutions. Normally, in remote areas, they'll have a robot. This machine that kind of rolls into the room, and then there's a video interface with you and a doctor on the other end. And so maybe that's a hybrid. But that's a form of, in terms of the educational field, you could certainly have those kinds of things. But that's really no different than when you attend a course and you're watching a video on the course, or even if you're watching something on YouTube after the fact when you're trying to learn how to make an egg, an omelet, or whatever it is that YouTube videos have these days. I do want to pick up on this other notion, though, that it's this idea of where AI can go. And as Dan pointed out, I think that we're far off from a general purpose, self-contained, self-sufficient general intelligence. That is something that's kind of walking around, something like, I guess, the robot in Lost in Space, Will's best friend, something of that kind of concept. I think we're far off from that. However, I think that we do see things that are incremental that in many respects reflects what Alex has been talking about. So, for example, that make our lives easier, such as the robot that flips hamburgers. It'll be the robot that pre-measures things or does repetitive tasks that are not necessarily the highest and best use of human intelligence and human action. So I generally see no issues or have no qualms with robotics funneled by algorithms or shaped by algorithms, doing repetitive tasks that frees up human capital to be redirected into other areas. Now, of course, people are going to be upset, and that's what the storyline has been that the machines are going to take over everything, and it's going to displace people. Well, yeah, it's going to displace people, but we just have to find another place to funnel them into in all these new areas, and it's going to be information and education. Sharif, I did have one last comment, and that was in response to a question asked by one of the audiences, and that was, what are the ethical implications of cognitive robots? That is to say that we eventually do reach a general purpose AI.
Ethical implication of cognitive robots.
Yeah. So, I mean, whether it's a stationary or whether it's a fully functional, walking, talking, model. I guess the question is, I don't know, because that really raises an interesting debate. Because at that point, the question becomes, if they are fully functioning and they are general purpose AI and they can make distinctions and draw conclusions and do their own analysis, are they in fact legally, are we able to recognize them as a separate entity? And everything goes through with that. I mean, or do you take these general purpose robots and you just say that, hey, listen, you purchase them and then treat them like a refrigerator, except that this refrigerator walks and talks and can make decisions and go find things and be, be an assistant. It raises all kinds of things. And then the third piece of that is that the ethical implications depends once again on how they're programmed. Because if you're asking them to make decisions, what kind of decisions are you asking them to make? Say, for example, like RoboCop, the movie that I believe many people are familiar with. Are you asking that general purpose, or even in that case, a specific intelligence or directed robot to make decisions over life and death and enforcement in nuanced situations? And so that it opens up a wide field. So on the one hand, the good news is that we have a great deal of time to think about it, because we're not there yet. Dr. Sharif?
Thank you. Professor Donald, I want to take few questions from audience for you. Alea, her question is, what is the role of artificial intelligence in robotics, and how artificial intelligence used in 21st century? So how do you want to add new things for our students, for our youth? Professor Donald,
I think it's important to have an idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about robotics, because there's a fun thing where high school students here in Silicon Valley have robotics contests and develop interesting ideas for robots. But mostly what we call robotics is just doing things, some of them can dance now and do backflips and things like that. But again, they're very special purpose. That's all they do. I mean, they're built for that, and they can do these really cool things and dance and so on. But just taking imagine an assembly line where every person does one little piece of assembling something. One person screws on the wheel, and one person does this, and one person does that. Well, that's what most robots really do, is they replace that. Like in Silicon Valley, there was a fairly large Toyota parts plant that employed 6,000 people, and Elon Musk bought it and turned it into a couple people did in between, but Elon Musk eventually bought it, and now there's hundreds of people working there, not thousands, hundreds. And I have a friend that works there, and his job is, he's got a master's degree in mechanical engineering, and his job is to be a robot repairman, because basically the whole factory is robotic. People, all of those assembly line tasks, and they actually do have an assembly line. All of those tasks are done by mechanical slaves, if you were, as it were. The issue of imagine that a robot is just picking up a part off the conveyor belt. Well, what happens if that part is not exactly where the robot thinks that it's supposed to be? How does the robot have the intelligence to be able to move a little farther one way or a little farther the other way in order to pick up that part? Well, that's where artificial intelligence comes in, because you can basically, there's different ways of doing it, but you can train the robot to use feedback. I mean, it knows where its arm is, it knows where the part is, and it knows it knows to adjust where its arm goes based on the feedback, the information that it gets. And I'd like to talk a tiny bit about the very earliest Cybernet, basically the very earliest attempts to do this. And it was done by a guy named Norbert Wiener, who invented cybernetics. And that's the word that we get all this stuff, cybersecurity, cyber this, cyber that. And what his goal was is to make it so that on ships, the guns that were pointing at stuff could basically get feedback from the rocking of the wave and adjust where they pointed so that the guns would be able to point and shoot things down. That was the earliest, very earliest case of using, quote, artificial intelligence for robots. And there's something that Wiener said that I think is so wonderful. He said it in 1945, and I'm just going to read this one paragraph by him. He said, "Perhaps I may clarify the historical background of the present situation if I say that the first industrial revolution, the revolution of the dark satanic mills, was the devaluation of the human arm by the competition of machinery. There is no rate of pay where in the United States a pick and shovel laborer can live, which is low enough to compete with the work of a steam shovel as an excavator. The modern industrial revolution is similarly bound to devalue human brain. It is about simpler and more routine decisions, or at least in simpler and more routine decisions. Of course, just as the skilled carpenter, the skilled mechanic, the skilled dressmaker have some degree survived the first industrial revolution, so the skilled scientist and the skilled administrator may survive the second. However, taking the second revolution is accomplished, the average human being of mediocre attainment has nothing left to sell that is worth anybody's money to buy." The answer is, of course, is to have a society based on human values rather than buying or selling. To arrive at this society, we need a good deal of planning and a good deal of struggle, which, if best comes to best, maybe on the plane of ideas, and otherwise, who knows? I feel like it is my duty to pose these information and understanding of the process to those who have active interest in the conditions and the future of labor. That is, to the labor unions. I did manage to blah, blah, blah. Basically, he says, I don't want to, there's more here than I wanted to read, but he ends this by what he basically says from here on is that we have to find the things that make human beings and nurture those things. And those things are art, music. The second book he wrote was called The Human Use of Human Beings, and to try and identify the kinds of things that make us special. And he points out, if you're competing with mechanical slaves, what are you competing to be? You're competing to be a slave yourself. And so AI on one hand and robots allow us to have a world where the kind of shit jobs can be taken by machines. But then what do people do? And I agree with Dr. William, there's a lot of creativity And all throughout history, there's been time after time when people have said, well, the jobs are all going to go away. Nobody's going to have any work. The Luddites were a famous group that smashed the sewing fabric making machines in England because they were afraid that there wouldn't be any jobs anymore. And they tried to stop technological progress. And that's become a synonym for somebody that tries to stop technological progress, a Luddite. But for the whole idea of entrepreneurship or things that people can do, all of these things provide incredible opportunities, because as long as there's problems that human beings have, as long as it's possible for people to live better, have a better life, be more healthy, be anything, there's an opportunity for somebody to provide that service or product. So it'll never ever end. And I really want to agree with what Dan said about the whole idea of cognitive robots. There's a great computer scientist who was also very interested in society and philosophy and psychology named Douglas Hofstadter. And he understands this very well. And his guess was that it would be about 500 years. We're so far from it. As I said before, there's nothing that any artificial intelligence does that's in any way resembles human language. It's just a trick. It tricks you into thinking it does, but it's not. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Dr. William. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I
Thank
just had a brief story. I just wanted to kind of reinforce and buttress Professor Donald's story, and that is, in our everyday world, we know the word sabotage. And the interesting thing about it is it comes from sabot, which is a wooden shoe. And sabotage comes from the workers who took their wooden shoes and stuck them into the machinery to destroy the machinery that they thought were going to take their jobs. Hence, we have the term sabotage, which actually means, taking a wooden shoe and sticking it in a machinery in order to obstruct it. So with that in mind, I mean, I'm confident that if there are threats or perceived threats in the future, humans will, and people will generally protest. But this leads into a question that was just asked, Sharif, by somebody in our audience, and that is simply, can artificial intelligence escape human control? And I'd say right now the answer is no. But I say that with a grain of salt, because you don't know what's going on or what people are doing around the world. And I just hearken it back just anecdotally to the issue of cloning. For the longest time, we thought, at least the world thought, that cloning was impossible, it could never be done. But then when it was done in another country, and I believe with lambs, and then it's been repeated with other animals, then that raised a whole bunch of ethical questions. So when you raise the question, can they escape human control? The answer right now is no, because we're just not at that level of development. But the grain of salt is, we don't know, because we don't know maybe 500 years from now where the development and such will be. But it's interesting that all of the major Hollywood, the major movies, their storyline is always that these out of control intelligent artificial AI robots come and they destroy the world, or that your toaster finally objects to making toast and one day says, I feel like I need to make eggs. I don't no longer want to make toast. And so then the toaster revolts, and then the blender revolts. Those things, while funny and interesting and hilarious and great concepts and entertaining, are not going to happen for quite some time. But it's always good for a laugh or to take your mind off things. But we're about 500 years away. However, I do want to say to the excellent questions, because beginning to think about the ethical implications allows us then, during the programming stage, understand what we're putting into the system. So, as Dan said, we don't have garbage in and garbage coming out. Rather, we have thoughtful kinds of decisions and ethical decisions being made about the programs and the programming and the algorithms that are being constructed, so that we don't end up with disasters on the other end. And that only comes from meaningful thinking on the front end. Dr. Sharif?
Thank you, Mr. Alex. as you are trying to share some of your concept on AI, like utilizations in the futures, so you can share with us. I think one of. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, you were just cutting out a little bit. Okay, yes, I saw that question. So different places that we can incorporate AI throughout our society. So right now, it's already being incorporated in different sectors throughout our society. So I'm just going to read some off. There's that image, but for the people that can't see the image or it's not pulled up. So there is gaming, finance, data security, social media, automotive, robotics, entertainment, e-commerce, education, agriculture, transportation, healthcare, astronomy or aerospace, and then yeah, I mentioned gaming. So there's, I think those are the main categories. So we're going to continue to incorporate AI in those categories, and further, you know, learn from it and benefit from it. So one of the things that I've noticed AI that not a lot of people realize, or I think it's a new thing that some of the advertisement companies are tapping into, is I've actually gotten calls from the artificial intelligence, computer simulated, whatever, phone call. So I answered the phone and I'm talking to like some salesperson, and I didn't even realize this was like 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't even realize it was a robot right away because the voice sounded so real. But after listening for 20 or 30 seconds, I heard the person repeat one of the sentences exactly the same as earlier in the conversation. And it just struck me as strange. So after I got off the phone, I did some, keyword searches in Google, artificial intelligence, robot, cold calling or whatever, and I found it's a real thing. So I'm not going to be shocked if we continue to see AI used in both good and bad ways. And there's also military applications and a lot of scary things in that aspect. So I do want to talk about how Dr. William mentioned. So it does help solve robotics and AI repetitive tasks, and it is going to free up a lot of time when it comes to those tasks. And I think it's good if those tasks are dangerous, if they're psychologically damaging for a person, like working in a sweatshop or a factory, and they're continuing to do the same repetitive thing day after day, week after week, probably working way more than 40 hours a week. So we could have robots and technology possibly replace some of those jobs. I do, again, really support universal basic income to make sure that those people still have the financial support they need, so they're still able to buy food, pay their bills, get their prescription medication or whatever they need, get the help that they need, and secure their place to live. So I don't think that people should be working these difficult jobs, slave labor conditions, working around harmful products, and just to make things for the people in the developed countries or the people that can afford them. I think there's a lot of horrible jobs out there for maybe some things that we definitely need, and robots and technology can replace that. So I don't think I've ever mentioned a movie in this video program because I'm not really promoting movies, and maybe but I will mention that a lot of these conversations have been summarized into one movie. And if you are going to watch a movie and you're interested in technology and AI, I would definitely recommend watching Ex Machina. It's a really good movie when it comes to it just covers so many of these subjects. And it also talks about the Turing test, and it's not just something in the movie, that's actually a real thing, how they train or try to see if AI could actually function as a real human. So that's another really cool keyword search if you want to search, if you're interested in AI, is the Turing test. So to see if artificial intelligence has the ability to make conscious decisions. So it's a really interesting field. I also wanted to talk about how I wish that we could incorporate AI, not just machines, but more technology when it comes to sorting trash. So instead of us just dumping these huge volumes of trash in landfills around the world and covering it up with dirt, just doesn't even make sense to me. I wish there was big conveyor belts with some sort of artificial intelligence and machines on big assembly lines, and they're just separating everything and putting it in the categories. So we can upcycle things that don't belong in the landfills. We can recycle the glass, the plastic, the metals, everything efficiently, separate the chemicals, the batteries. I don't think that we're doing things right. The impact, I think we're going to see the impacts of what we're dumping in the landfills, not just in the next few years, but we're going to see horrible impacts in the next 10 to 20 years, the next decade or two. We're going to continue to see all of those chemicals and toxins leak through the soil, pollute the ocean water, the surrounding area. So I really hope that we can use those to incorporate that. One of the cool things that robots are now doing, I love. Well, I don't know if I love it. They're incorporating these robots in nursing homes and what are those, retirement homes, because there are a lot of lonely people that are elderly, that don't have friends, they don't have family. So it's kind of like Alexa, and they can actually talk to it, ask questions. Morally, I'm not sure if it's right, but it's it's probably better than nothing. So if we can find the correct ways to do that. So basically they have these robots that older people that don't have any family or friends can talk to, and it's kind of like their friend. And it maybe morally isn't right, but I don't know. It's a possible solution. I do hope that we use technology to find better refrigerants and better ways of insulating and better efficiency with lights. Thankfully, with technology, we have increased solar panels efficiency. I think we're at 29% now. So that's a really cool thing that we're working towards. And we were talking about if AI has the ability to take over, and even if that's on the horizon or it's in the distant future or whatever, we still have the risk of hacking and computer viruses, and those I think have the higher percentage or ability of causing damage when everything's interconnected. Not necessarily AI taking over the system, but when everything's connected through the internet, I think that a lot of attention does have to be implemented with firewalls and security and just hacking protection in place.
Yes.
So.
Thank you. I think Mr. Dan.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to a few points Alex brought up. I love. Well, first of all, I just wanted to pitch nuclear power, because if you, even with the horrible disasters we had in Fukushima and Chernobyl, if you average that all out in terms of number of people who died per megawatt of power, it's actually the safest, or as safe as wind power. So there's a lot of misperceptions about nuclear as being dangerous, and I don't think those stand up to scrutiny. And actually, there's a lot of technologies like molten salt reactors, which could theoretically are incapable of melting down or having any dangerous runaway scenarios, but which have, unfortunately are very hard to develop due to regulations. So I just wanted to mention nuclear for the viewers. But the other thing I wanted to respond to is the idea of using robots for recycling. I think that's an excellent idea, because unfortunately we're seeing in the U.S. recycling is actually decreasing because it's just, unfortunately, if people can't make a buck with it, they're not incentivized to do it, And while they can make some money with aluminum, it's just people find they can't make money with plastics and paper and so part of the reason is it's just expensive to have. People are lazy and they don't want to sort these things at home. So then you have to have people sorting these things in factories, in processing facilities, and that's expensive. So I really like the idea of having robots do that. I think that's an obvious application where robots with computer vision, deep learning could sort those recycling materials. The last thing I wanted to respond to was the issue of AI safety, and I do. So, well, I don't think we've made much progress towards like human level AI or general AI. I really don't think we know how long it's going to take. And so if you poll experts, some people think it's going to be coming in 10 years. You have Kurzweil saying it's coming in 2024 or 2045. And then you have, people saying it's going to be 500 years. I just don't think we know. And so I do think we actually have to be careful about that. And we should be investing in long-term AI safety research, because it may actually, what we're learning is that this problem of controlling AI that is more intelligent than we are is extremely difficult. It's not as simple as just putting in a line of code that says, don't harm humans. We're talking about systems that can may be capable of self-modification, and that may do, it may optimize things in a way that we may turn out to be bad. So I think we should be investing in AI safety research, even though these super intelligent AI is perhaps decades away. It may take that long to figure out how to make it safe. And we kind of only have one shot at this, like once it's developed, it's kind of, it may be too late at that point. So that's why, even though I don't think we are anywhere close to the super intelligent AI right now, I do think we should be investing in researching how to make it safe.
Thank you. Dr. William. Yes.
I agree with everything that Dan just said. I did want to move on to a separate point, though, and that is currently with regard to the deep learning and big data, because I want to, when we talk currently about how AI is really in its infancy right now, but it is being applied to our lives, and it seems in a dramatic way. You obviously have to talk about the big tech companies, Google, Amazon, etc., the search engines, social media, and that is really a problematic area, because in order to collect the big data, they are just kind of each company has their own rules, and it's like the wild, wild west out there. And you have to rely on whatever ethical norms that particular operator or works under or chooses is valuable. So some prefer to protect our privacy, some prefer not to. And yet all of this big data is what's fundamentally needed for the development of deep learning or advanced recognition. And so we have a challenge. We have an inflection point. How do we go about collecting all the data that's necessary to make an informed next level AI application, while at the same time protecting those things that individuals might find important to protect, such as their privacy and or the misuse of their data in ways that we never even contemplated. And that's kind of an open discussion right now. You're beginning to see some of the flare-ups here in the United States with regard to the calls for investigations of the big tech companies, and alleging that their size and their ability to collect the data and use the information that they've collected not only violates privacy, but also violates anti-competition issues. But it seems to me that that's something that right now, because we do have an inflection point, we need the information, but we want to have a say-so in who's collecting, how it's used, and so that it's not, at the end of the day, used against us. So we want the advancements, but we want them to be responsible advancements within the context of people that where we may just have nefarious actors running around there that there's nothing we can do about. I'd like to hear thoughts of the rest of the panel on that, but it seems to me that that's a current inflection point that is coming to bear.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. One of the specific questions I have, and I think I get this kind of questions from many schools, especially from the youth, those who are 16 to 18 years old. Basically, now a lot of like study materials they get from online.
Hmm.
That is actually they become too much of confused. Many materials come to online. What is the even specifically Dan and Professor Donalds, if you help us, the what should be the best guideline for if they want to develop their skills in AI and knowledge and these things, if you
Well,
provide any basic guidelines? Yeah.
well, I last time I looked at this was a few years ago, but I've actually gotten that question a lot since I got into machine learning and AI about 4 years ago, and people are always asking me that. Um, One of the best intro courses, if you to look at if you don't know anything about machine learning, is one on Coursera by Andrew Ng. His last
Mhm.
name's spelled NG. Um, and that is one of the best intro courses to machine learning. Um, then there's another website called Udemy, where there is a course on machine learning and AI, which is taught by some people from Uber Labs, I think. I think it's Andrew Karpathy is the name of the instructor. So that's another good one. But then what I recommend is actually um, the best way to learn is to actually do some coding yourself. So with something like programming, you don't really learn it by just reading a book. You learn it by doing something and
Mhm.
getting your hands dirty, learning how to set up your environment, and then actually writing code. And it's books can be helpful as references, but I wouldn't just read a book to learn how to code. I would actually do a project. So um, think of a simple project you could do. Like there's lots of open source software available that you can codes that you can download and you can try to run. Like there's lots of machine learning codes out there from Facebook and Google. A lot of those big companies have made their machine learning codes available. Um, and you can just download them and try to run them yourself and see what happens. Another website you can look at if you want to try doing your own coding projects is called Kaggle, Kaggle. And on Kaggle, they have a lot of different challenge problems where you can learn about machine learning. And then they have competitions where they have a machine learning problem or some kind of problem, like it could be uh, um, image analysis or analysis of video data. They have a lot of a lot of these different challenge problems, and they have competitions where you can you know submit you can develop a code to solve the problem and submit it, and then your code will be analyzed as to how well it solved the problem and then ranked against other people. And so that's a fun way to develop your machine learning skills. And sometimes they even have like prize money on there. So yeah, my main advice actually is for learning programming in particular is uh, to do projects yourself rather, and not just watch videos online. Um, and 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 as you're doing those projects, you can be learning as you
Thank you, Professor Donald.
I taught programming for decades, and I totally agree with Dan. It's like learning music. You know, so I want to learn to play guitar. I'm going to read this book on it. That does. You're not going to learn that way. Programming is something you do with your body. I mean, you're actually typing on the keyboard and looking at stuff and watching things happen. It's not something you can do. And I'm going to talk about that. I'll get back to that in a second. But I actually have that in my notes. But I wanted to just add one thing to something earlier Dan said, is when Google was training this stuff and Amazon was doing the training, where, as I said right at the beginning, you have to have, if you have millions of pictures, then you can train it to recognize a face that it's never seen. But the way that they did it, and they still do it, people still do this, is they have these platforms, and one of the best known is called Mechanical Turk. And what they do basically is present people with pictures, and then the person writes what they think is in the picture, and every time they do it, they get paid 1/10 of a cent or something like that. And so a lot of the people who do it in India. It's actually a very it's, if you have a country where 1/10 of a cent is worth more than it is in the United States, it becomes very desirable to do. And I don't know why the black faces were trained as gorillas, but it's potentially that somebody's just sabotaging it. I mean, it's actually got potential to do that, but they're not learning really on their own. They're just learning to copy, and so I want to also mention two companies that I've worked with, and one of them uses artificial intelligence to look at the way that people view videos, advertising, and they determine what frames in that video are the ones that the people have the most. I mean, they linger on them longer. They go to them for various kinds of reasons, and then they extract those frames and use them for the thumbnails. So which makes the probability that somebody is going to click on that particular thumbnail higher, because they know that this is the part of the video that is most attractive to people. So and they of course use artificial intelligence to do that. They have to use training on the videos, and they can get training videos. You can get them from Google. They have a huge repository of training videos that you can use if you're doing your own AI projects. And the other company I want to mention is a company that started out figuring out how full trash cans were. And they had sensors on the trash can, and they used an artificial intelligence to be able to predict which trash cans were going to get full first, so they could optimize the janitor or whatever walking around emptying the trash cans and make sure that the trash can. They evolved into this thing incorporating artificial smell, because originally they did have sensors, visual sensors, that allowed them to know if people were throwing stuff into recycling, throwing trash into recycling, and so on like that, so that when the trash was picked up, they'd know that there had been the wrong stuff. But one of the big problems with recycling is when people start trying to recycle food and things like that, it actually gums them so bad that they have to just take whole dump trucks worth of recycling and put it in the other kind of trash. They can't recycle it because it's been wrecked by having organic material. And so there's a company that does this thing called artificial smell, so they could actually detect the organic material and be able to separate the trash that way. So that's happening. that's the people are working right now. Actually, the guy who started the company is the same one that I told you was a robot repairman at Tesla. But back to the issue of how you learn. The most simple kind of deep learning is basically what's called a statistical thing called linear. It's a regression analysis. Sorry, my brain. It's early in the morning. Regression analysis, and what that is basically solving complicated linear equations and then modifying them as you get more information, so that that you get more accurate. There's in a linear equation, there's sort of constants that are part of attached to each of the variables, but you have to guess what those constants are. And over time, you can refine them so that you get more and more accurate linear equations. And that means, what that means is the data that comes in, you can predict what, given the variables that you know, you can predict what it's going to do. So the math that's used to do that is, there's two kinds of math that are basically used to do it. One of them is called linear algebra, and the other is calculus, which everyone's familiar with. And so I highly recommend, if you're a student and you're in school and you want to do this, that you really take the time to learn linear algebra and statistics, because those are the key tools. I worked at the company that did the fraud detection for Bank of America and Barclays Bank, and that's what they basically used is regression analysis to do that. So, and then I want to go back and agree with Dan completely. One of the programming languages that has the most possible interfaces to these wonderful tools is called Python, and it's very easy language to learn, really. It's my favorite language. I know lots of languages, and I do everything in Python. I love it. And one of the things that Python you can get is, as Dan said, there's tools from Google, and one of the tools that you can download is TensorFlow. So, and there's, on the Google site, there's actually lessons and exercises that you can do, where you can start at the most basic, installing TensorFlow, getting it running, and then little projects that explain and teach you about AI using TensorFlow. And it's a pretty full-featured AI platform, and it's free. So I would so recommend that you do what Dan was saying and just download Python. It's free. Download TensorFlow, it's free, and then start going through the exercises. But in addition, if you're in college, focus on, make sure that you, not necessarily focus, but that you become familiar with calculus and linear algebra, because they're kind of the key cognitive tools that we use to be able to do this stuff. So that's.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Alex, what do you want to add, especially as you have a lot of experience in different countries in Europe and in Africa? So what your experience you want to share in terms of learning AI and computer science? Yeah. Alex, unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. So again, as we're talking about technology and artificial intelligence, I think that we're so interested in this is just because it's so captivating. It's just so awe-inspiring and so interesting, just technology, that over, all of the millions and billions of years that it took the Earth's climate to regulate and us to evolve, and we're organic beings, and we're creating these machines and this technology, and it's just so interesting. And there's so many applications that we can incorporate technology in that helps us live longer, live better lives, prosper, and be safe and everything. So it's incredible. So efficiency, I think, is the main focus that I would try to incorporate technology. How could we be more efficient? How could we whether it's sorting through data, sorting through trash, transporting supplies in the warehouse, or with drones, or just incorporating technology. Efficiency, I think, is very important when it comes to technology, and us collectively reducing our environmental impact and our individual carbon footprint. Unfortunately, technology does have a large carbon footprint. Like for every microchip and every electronic server and keyboard, and it takes a lot of energy to run those machines, and a lot of energy to produce this stuff. So I think that we need to continue to be cautious of what we're creating, make sure there's good applications. Personally, I try to buy electronics that I need and not electronics that I want. We do have to increase the efficiency of the recycling process, or how can we upcycle the electronics that we have. In the last episode, we're also talking about and going into the subject of recycling batteries. How could we recycle batteries efficiently? As Sharif just asked me, what have I seen around the world? One of the things that I've seen when I went to Ghana, when I went to Puerto Rico after Superstorm Haiyan, and other countries around the world, there's just not adequate recycling. So right now, we're recycling UN statistics and data and information, and pretty universal, that we're only recycling 9%, and that's probably the cans and the bottles and everything. Our recycling infrastructure in the world is horrible. So as we could incorporate these machines to help us recycle, and AI to just problem solve, the batteries and all these electronics are causing so much impact on the groundwater and all of that. So that's something that I definitely think that more research should go into. How can we do this at a sustainable level? Because that is one thing that I have seen. I've seen a lot of pollution, a lot of technological pollution in different places around the world. Personally, with me, one things that I will pick up and I'll never walk past is a battery on the ground, because batteries are very harmful to the environment. So I wanted to mention, since I live in the Bay Area, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and Donald lives closer to the ocean, also in Santa Cruz County, we're fortunate that we live right next to Silicon Valley. And as I mentioned in another episode, right there's Amazon, eBay, PayPal, SanDisk, Microsoft, Netflix, all of these big corporations, these big names people know, are right over there, like 20, 30 miles from where I'm currently located. So that's a technologically advanced everything. There's just so much technology right there. That's where the new Apple building is. That's where they're creating a lot of things. I think there's Tesla warehouses and everything. So as there's all this technology there, I've been on the forefront of having the opportunity to go into that area, and you see new technologies. You see some of the first drones flying. They have the NASA's Ames Research Center really close. That's where I saw the first security robot driving around through the mall. That was just like, even everyone there, they've never seen anything like that. So you saw the security robot driving around through the mall with the cameras and the sensors, and doing security with some sort of AI built into it. So we've also had the opportunity to see all of the electric bikes, electric scooters, all of the rentals in that area, because there's a lot of startups in Silicon Valley, and that's where they release their new products. And those, like electric bikes and scooters, and that program allowed everyone to be more efficient, to get to where they needed to go rather than driving vehicles. So that was really cool to see, that's all located right there. One subject that we haven't touched upon in this conversation is transhumanism. So as we continue to progress towards artificial intelligence, AI, technology, all this automation, there's a whole nother category. So if you're watching this video, if you're considering a career in technology, AI, if this is interest up to you, I do want to put out the keyword search. It's called transhumanism. So the definition is the belief or theory that the human race can evolve beyond its current physical and mental limitations, especially by means of science and technology. So we're already incorporating that, like people that may have lost a limb to where they have a prosthetic, and we're incorporating that with heart monitors and all kinds of things with maybe blood pressure or people that have diabetes. So Elon Musk has now simulated, and he's worked on the brain implants. So we will continue to progress in that direction with transhumanism and trying to live better quality lives, healthy lives. There's also with the stem cell research and nanotechnology, we're going to continue to see huge advancements in the healthcare sector and with medical. So if you are considering a career, that's another way to direct your education and knowledge, because it is an exciting future. We have a lot to learn, a lot of applications. I do just really hope that we direct our technology and our AI towards things that we need and not just things that we want. And that's just my perspective on it.
Thank
So
you.
I'll
Thank
leave
you.
it back to
Thank
the
you.
floor. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the today's sessions. Actually, World Talent Economy Forums with the collaborations of Al Noor Academy and Asia Research and Development Institutions. We are trying to reach 100 million youth peoples. And every day we are getting a lot of response from the Asia Pacific, from India, from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from Singapore. Everywhere we are reaching very fast. And at least 10 different universities, school, college, they are collaborating with World Talent Economy Forum. Then this is our objective. We want to go through modern science, engineering, and technology. And specifically, this kind of session is very much important. We get a huge audience response today because I think this kind of guidelines is very much important for our youth. I want to give special thanks to our speaker, Mr. Dans, Professor Donald, Dr. William, and Alex. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. And I have a request, because as we are developing some academic related activities, those who want to contribute as an academicians in World Talent Economy Forums, you want to share your plan or everything will be 100% free from World Talent Economy Forums. We are distributing all of the things 100% free. So if you want to help us, if you want to support us, if you want to share your knowledge, your syllabus on computer science and engineering, because student has huge demand on that. When they open the Google anything, they become confused. But people like you, those who can guide our youth communities. So that is the important things. Even right now, my friend, example from Sri Lanka, Mr. Saros, every time he's communicating with me. So how we can improve, how we can collaborate, and how we can work. So we have a strong collaboration in between this ecosystem. So hopefully these sessions and this kind of session will be very much effective for our youth community, and youth can change the future. That is our objective. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. I want to start with Mr. Dan, then Dr. Williams, then Mr. Alex, and finally Professor Donald.
Okay, thanks, Sharif. Yeah, this is a great conversation. It's we hit a lot of topics which I know your viewers are really interested in, which are really relevant to the future global economy. So a lot of your viewers are younger people trying to figure out their career. So it's really important to know like what changes are coming, and yeah, that's and really people should be excited about the future and transhumanism as well. It has not gotten some of these issues have not gotten great news coverage. The news tends to focus on the negative side of things, but I think if you look at the overall trends, things are getting better with the use of technology. So yeah, I'll leave it there. And again, thank you for putting together this panel today.
Thank you, Mr. Don. Then now, Dr. William.
Yes. Actually, I just had a I don't want to overstep my bounds. It is your show, Dr. Sharif, but I guess with Dan, I'd like to. Well, my question, if he's still around, was whether or not they expected increased funding over at NIH, and wouldn't this be a really exciting time? And I'll frame it this way, and that's because one theme, at least that all of these conversations, regardless of the topic, is essentially this: that right now we're on the precipice. We've got 20 days ahead of us. New leadership here in the U.S. And given the trifecta of the issues, social, the pandemic, the economic, the United States government, the American people are going to have to respond to it and meet it, given its size and nature, with the same kind of size and response of the federal government. And what I mean by that is that the United States might be looking at a type of an administration that we haven't seen since, say, Franklin Roosevelt, with an increase on all fronts, because all of the issues that we are raising really is an all hands on deck and facing a number of issues. But in this particular area of AI and medical research, given what's gone on with the pandemic, I fully expect that the funding will expand exponentially for NIH and a number of the other organizations that the NIH supports. So it's an exciting time. And I'm curious, Dan, that perhaps in the future you can come back and you can tell us about the before, which we've all seen, and then maybe you can tell us about the after. Now, with that in mind, I do want to say this to a worldwide audience. Happy New Year. Absolutely happy New Year. I can't, we should be thankful, mindful, and remember those that we've lost and the impact we've had, but celebratory about what we have in front of us, and particularly in this area of AI, because it's not just the sky is the limit, the universe is the limit in this regard, because when we make these advances with sustained efforts, we've got room for anybody and everybody that wants to pursue the field, and there's a place for you. And if there's not a place for you, make it up. And that's one of the exciting adventures. This is really kind of an intellectual gold rush. And regardless from the time being, with basic measures, individual measures, or systemic measures, there's everything to be optimistic about. And so I wish everyone well. I'm excited. I hope general intelligence for computers, artificial, is around the corner, but I certainly hope that we think through how we apply it and what we're doing at the beginning. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. William. Professor Donald.
Well, I want to say one quick answer to a question that somebody asked is they talked about the relative value of Haskell versus Python. And and I want to say this real quick, which is just that Haskell is a really cool, really wonderful language, but what you're looking for is the amount of support that it has. It's not very widely used, whereas Python was the main language Google used for years, and they still use it in a lot of places. And there's support libraries like TensorFlow and things like that you can use with it. So by all means, learn Haskell, but I think you're going to find that for learning artificial intelligence, you're much better off using Python. Let's see. I don't think we're going to have to worry about general intelligence anytime soon. And so besides learning the basic math that you need to learn, it's really a good idea to take sociology, psychology, linguistics, because I think people haven't looked into this enough, and they don't realize how incredibly complicated human beings are and what some of the stuff that we're actually doing. And how did you learn language? Do you remember? No. We're doing things with each other and calibrating to each other in ways we don't understand. We don't understand how voice tone affects things. We don't understand. There's so much nuance that that we're not even able to actually describe. So there's not one version of linguistics. There's different versions of linguistics that try and attempt to explain human language, and none of them are adequate. They're all inadequate. There's sociology is even more complicated than linguistics because it incorporates language, but it also incorporates psychology and the ways that our relationships affect each other in small groups all the way up to nations. And again, we don't really even have the vocabulary or the ability to even describe it, much less duplicate it. So it's the particular part of social networks that I'm involved in, which actually has been applied a lot to entrepreneurship and innovation, is called social network analysis. And you can learn about it by going to the International Network of Social Network Analysts website, insna.org, and that's a good starting point. And if you're not able to get to a university, you may not have the resources to do it. MIT has puts all of its courses online. And so you have these just absolute top quality professors giving you lectures, and they have much of the source material that you actually need. In some cases, you need to buy books to accompany, but it's called, just look for OpenCourseWare MIT, and you can actually take classes in linear algebra and calculus and all the different things with absolute best possible teachers teaching you. So I would recommend that as a resource too. And ultimately, what we're really doing is very, very, very small steps. Like robots are doing very, very teeny things. And as I said, we don't really agree what intelligence is or what general intelligence would be. You can't achieve a target if you don't really know what it is. So computers have given us a way to learn more about ourselves. And when we hit these, we think we're going to do this wonderful thing and it's going to be so easy. And then we start to do it and realize that we just had no idea how complicated it was. So that's why I think it's going to take quite a while. So, look into industries, but if you're 16 to 18, you're trying to learn, you really need to learn linear algebra, calculus, and then learn programming, which you can teach yourself. It's fun. I taught myself programming. So have fun. I mean, that's the main thing about it. Have fun. It's fun. Programming is fun. So go for it. That's all.
Mr. Alex.
Okay, thank you. So to try to summarize this conversation, another great discussion. Before that, I just want to mention, Donald brought up MIT, and I just sent a link to Sharif. And this is a really cool thing that MIT actually put together. A lot of our discussions on this forum are related to sustainable development, solving climate change, and just information. So using technology and simulations and computer science and everything else, MIT put together this wonderful simulation. It's incredible. So it shows us ways that we could solve climate change. It's on their website. It's called Inroads, and it's this really amazing simulation. So you can adjust how much renewables, energy efficiency, coal, oil, if we increase technology, and it changes where we can get Earth's temperature or atmospheric temperatures. It's so fun to play around with. You can adjust all of these variables, and it shows what we have to do. The best thing about this program is it shows that just switching to renewables is not going to solve it. Just going to natural gas is not going to solve it, but they each have an impact. So if we do a little bit of all of these things, we we could get to our goal of reducing Earth's atmospheric temperatures. So solving climate change is a huge thing that we have to work towards. It's a huge issue. We could use technology and this really cool platform to help educate other people regarding that. So I do want to just mention smartphones, because there's smartphones in like every country I've been to. People had smartphones in Nepal and Ghana, in Iraq. I mean, they're everywhere. So smartphones have so much technology with the apps you can download, what you can do, the worldwide internet. It's endless. But again, I just wanted to reiterate, like I did earlier in this episode, it depends on your time management, how you spend your time. Do you want to, dumb yourself down by watching stupid YouTube videos and Facebook and drama, or do you want to learn about computer science, technology? Check out this cool website that I just put on. There's only so much time in the day. If you're staring at the screen, try to think like what information are you putting into your head? What are you learning? Like, what are you benefiting from? Because there's a lot of stuff to waste your time on the internet. So I do want to mention flying cars. We haven't talked about that, how AI is being incorporated into automated driving vehicles, and how we can incorporate that with flying vehicles, because there's already flying vehicles out. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of prototypes. There's information online regarding that, and I think that it is a direction that we're definitely going. So I have a list right here of some jobs that are going to be replaced or really highly likely in different places around the world. So if you're going to start a new career, it's good to know that a lot of jobs are going to be replaced. So in BBC, whether you think it's a trusted news source or not, there's an article that said 20 million factory jobs will be replaced by the year 2030. That's a lot of jobs. So factory jobs are those repetitive tasks that we talked about, where if one person's doing the same thing, the owners of the company, they're not going to want to pay an employee to do that one little thing if they could just buy a robot or a machine one time to do that task, and then they replace that employee. So they never got to pay that employee. They don't got to pay benefits or don't have to deal with any hassle with that employee. They just got a robot doing the same thing. So a lot of jobs are going to be replaced. There's a list right here. Now, this could be accurate. It's just the first thing that I pulled up. Just, do individual research on your own. So assembly line and factory workers, they're at risk of losing their job to technology, automation, machines, AI. Bus drivers, taxi drivers, and truck drivers. That's definitely happening because we're going to see more self-driving cars, self-driving taxis, delivery systems when it comes to like Amazon packages and everything with the robots. Phone operators, telemarketers, and receptionists. That's already happening because there's the automated call systems and the AI calling me, trying to sell me stuff and everything. Cashiers, obviously that's happening because we're seeing the self-checkouts in the stores. Those are at risk. Bank tellers and clerks, packaging, stock rooms, and warehouses. We're seeing the machines lift up packages and shipments throughout warehouses and take them to where they need to go. We're now seeing robots move those as well. Prescription medication, if you're going to be a pharmacist, they now have those huge machines half a mile from where I'm located at the CVS. They have one of those big machines that automatically sorts your prescription medication. So knowing all of this allows you to decide, do I want to go into the field of filling people's prescription, or do you want to get a job in a career where you're going to have job security? So another good source for this is going to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Outlook website. It'll show the projections of jobs in different areas, and I'm going to conclude it with we should all be responsible. Technology is a really exciting and promising thing that's in our future, but we need to continue to stay true to our morals, be responsible, and try our best to support things that we need and not just things that we want. So that's my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. Thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. So this is really, really helpful for our youth community, and that is our objective. And Happy New Year's. Especially I want to give thanks to the speakers, those who always support World Talent Economy forums, and as well as the I know that many people from different countries, they're observing our show, they're supporting our World Talent Economy forums. They always come up with the good questions. The audience, I really want to give special thanks. Hopefully this year we will do more interesting works, more effective works, and happy new year everyone, and take care.